Hi, I am Bona. I am from Bulgaria.
Okay.
Association of European Projects in Bulgaria. Thank you.
Good, good. And let's see. Anyone else who hasn't said their name, please just introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, it's Sezen. I'm from Malta and from Tama. I'm an administrative officer.
Fantastic. Naz?
Hello, I'm Naz from Turkey, and I came here in Malta for an European Solidarity Corps project, and I am working with CCIF right now.
Okay, Kauta?
Hi, I'm Kautar from Italy, and I'm an intern working with CCIF.
Aish?
Hi, I'm Ayşe. I'm from Turkey. I'm European Solidarity Corps Volunteers working with CCIF.
I didn't leave anyone. I think we are all we're all done. Andrea, it's all yours, man.
Okay, no problem. So today I've kind of adapted some of the work that we do when it comes to development and writing. So throughout the year, we hold a number of sessions for different NGOs and also public entities in Malta on project development and writing. And so today I've adapted the presentations that we usually provide into and compile them into one to give you some skills on how to start the development of a project and also some useful tips on how to write a project proposal. A lot of these ideas and the kind of tips that we will provide can be used for the majority of EU funding projects. So they are a bit more general in their concept, and they can be adapted to all kinds of proposals. So kind of topics that we'll be covering today, kind of project design and understanding a call for proposals, the aspect of project development, so how to first develop the idea and how to adapt that idea for different aspects of a project, the actual writing of a project proposal and some tips when it comes to the writing of project proposal and useful tips for the submission of the proposal. So first we start on project design. So first, kind of the idea of what a project is. So here, what a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique output. So here you have the aspect of temporary, means that every project has a definite end. And unique means that the output is different in some distinguishing way from all similar outputs. So here, if you have any experience when it comes to different EU-funded projects or projects in general, you understand that there's not something that is never ending, but that we have a start and an end date. So the project has a start and an end date. What will be long lasting are the results of that project. So when you have a project, its results are what will have the impact and what will outlast the deadline of the project. But it is still a temporary endeavor in that once you start the project, you have to conclude it in a set time frame. And unique is the output that although it is not practice for all projects, but still you have to have some kind of unique output for the project. So that is the element of uniqueness of the project. So call for proposals. So more often than not, once you start the project design, you have to look at the call for proposals. So the way your funding works is that a number of different calls are released every year for the different funding programs, and these calls set certain conditions on how the projects have to look. So when you look at the call for proposals, you have to look at the call title, and from there you have an idea if your project ideas are in line with what the project with what the general idea of the project, the general idea of the call is. The deadline, so how much time do you have to submit your project proposal? The co-financing rate, so how much will you have to contribute to the project for its implementation? More often than not, EU funding projects tend to have around about the 80% co-financing rate, so 80% of the project costs are financed by the EU and 20% are financed by the beneficiary. The scope of the project, the scope of the call, so the general conditions of the call and general idea of what kind of projects the call is looking out for. Call priorities, so here you have set priorities which each project has to meet. And more often than not, you would have a list of maybe 3, 4, or 5 priorities. And at the very least, you would have to, your project idea has to at least meet one of those project priorities. The more project priorities that it will meet, the better, the stronger the project is, and the better the chance that the project is actually granted funding. And then you have the eligibility criteria. So these are the baseline criteria for your project to be eligible. So in some cases, the eligible criteria might have what would be the type of organization. So the call might be set only for NGOs, or might be set only for public entities, or public entities and businesses only. And that would be the baseline eligibility criteria. So if your project does not meet these criteria, then it is not eligible. Or if your organization does not meet those criteria, then it is not eligible. Selection criteria. So these are a further set of criteria above those, the eligibility criteria, which will make your project selected for evaluation. And also, it is a criteria said that your project would be kind of to a certain degree. And finally, you have the award criteria. So the award criteria are the criteria on which your project is evaluated. So in this case, it might be on how many, for example, priorities does the project meet. If it meets one core priority, it would get a certain amount of points. If it meets 2, it would get another amount of points. And on other different aspects, on how, for example, the writing of the project, how easily understood the idea of the project is, the types of activities, the quality of the activities, the quality of the dissemination of the project. And these all fall under the award criteria. And here I'm going to show you a couple of aspects of a call document. I've selected the Erasmus Plus Youth Exchanges code document as it is one of the easier ones to understand. And here you have some basic eligibility criteria. So first, it gives you what are the eligible participating organizations. So any other organization which does not fall under one of these would not be eligible. The thing with Erasmus Plus, and especially the youth exchanges, there is the criteria, it is relatively open to all types of organizations. So it goes from non-profit organizations, associations, NGOs, NGOs at a European level, public bodies at different levels, being regional, national, and local, and also profit-making entities in the area of social responsibility. So it does factor in a number of different types of organizations, and now there's also including informal groups of young people. And then we're looking at who can apply. It's practically these types of organizations which can be found in an EU program country. So now the EU program countries are the EU 27. In the past it was the EU 28. Once the UK has left, and they have also left the Erasmus Plus program, they are no longer a program country. They can be a partner country, but only if you would have another partner from one of the program countries. So they would only be able to come in if let's say an entity from Malta has a partner from Italy, and then they could have a partner from the UK. Number of participating organizations. So for example, for the youth exchange, you need a minimum of 2 participating organizations, at least one sending, at least one receiving organizations. These have to be from different countries, so they can't be from the same country. And again, we're talking about program countries here. Duration of the project. So the project can last between 3 to 24 months. And we're looking at duration of the project. We're not looking at the duration of the mobility itself, so how long will the exchange be, but the duration of the project. So the time that you have to implement the project, to design, to prepare for the mobility itself, that is the duration of the project. The actual mobility will be much shorter. Then when it comes to the application, this has to be with the national agency of your organization. So in case of Malta, registered organizations in Malta would have to apply as a lead applicant with the national agency here in Malta, which is the European Union Programs Agency, the EUPA. And then when to apply. So here is the deadline. The youth exchanges for this year have 2 different deadlines. So there is an 11th May deadline and there is a 5th October deadline. And the time frames of when the projects will start vary. So projects that apply in the 11th of May and get granted funding have to start between 1st August and 31st December of this year. So that is when the projects will start. It's not when they will have to be concluded, but it's when they will start. So if the results come out in, let's say, September, October, then you would at least have to start the basics of the project by at least 31st December. So here we have signing of any grant agreements and that kind of stuff. And then 5th October, they have to start between 1st January and 31st May of the following year. Duration of the activity. So here is the duration of the actual mobility activity. And this has to be between 5 to 21 days. So excluding travel days. So a youth exchange has to last at least 5 days of activities. And then there is another day there's another day or 2 days which can be travel days. So then the whole thing would last, let's say, maybe 7 days. 1 day of travel to go, 1 day of travel to come back, and 5 days in the middle of activities. Venue of the activity must take place in the country of one or several in case of itinerant activities of the organization participating in the activity. So obviously, if there are 2 organizations involved in the project, one from Malta and one from Italy, the activities have to take place in either Malta or Italy. These would more often than not be in the receiving country. So the receiving country is Italy. Then obviously the activities would take part in Italy. Again, number of participating organizations, it's minimum to participating organizations, but these can go up. So you can have more than one organization participating, but you will always have the receiving organization, which will receive all the different participants in its country to do the activities. And eligible participants, you have young people aged between 13 and 30. So here, these would be the participants which would be doing the activities, will be taking part in the activities, but then with them you can have facilitators, a few number of facilitators which must be over 18. So these would be, let's say, their guardians, especially in the case of persons aged younger than 18. Number of participants and composition of national groups. So there are minimum of 16 and maximum of 60 participants per activity. So here are the number of participants that can take part in the activity. So here we're talking about the youths. In cases of youth exchanges involved only young people with fewer opportunities, the minimum number of participants is 10. So then minimum of 2 groups of young people from 2 different countries, and each group must have at least 1 group leader and maximum 1 facilitator per activity. And then when it comes to other criteria, at least one of the sending organizations or receiving organizations in the activity must be from the national agency to which the applicant is submitted. So obviously the lead applicant has to be has to partake in the activities. So then when it comes to setting up timeframes, so when it comes to the design of your project, it is important that you set timeframes and goals in the run-up to the submission of your proposal. So if you, let's say, take the application for October, and you're going to submit a proposal for October, what you have to do is you have to plan it properly in the months leading up to that deadline. So more often than not, first you would look at the organization and understand the needs of your organization, and also start the basics of the development of your project idea. So setting up, let's say, a framework, a skeleton of your project idea and what you want to achieve and how that will help your organization in the long term. From that, you put all these ideas to paper. So the formulation of a project brief. Alec, are you still hearing me? Because I'm not seeing.
Yeah. I'm here.
Video.
I'm here.
All right.
Yeah.
So this you have the formulation of the project idea and the drafting of the project brief. Once that has been concluded, if your project needs partners, and in the case of Erasmus Plus, you would need partners, you would need to start searching for these partners, and this would be the partner search. Once you have found these partner search, it is ideal that you set up some kind of memorandums of understanding. So or at least some basic agreement with these partners that they are willing to start the development of this project proposal. And so like that, you have something a bit binding with these project partners that they're going to pull out in the last second. Once this has been concluded, you start conducting secondary research into the project idea with your project partners. Then you start writing the project proposal. Once the project proposal has been written, or at different stages of the writing, you go to the consortium and ask for feedback to see what they can do to improve on the proposal. Throughout this whole process, you will need to look at the attachments that you will need to submit with the project proposal. So a number of different EU funding programs have varying degree of attachments that are required, and it is important that these attachments are submitted with the proposal. And then finally, once all of this has been concluded, you would be able to submit your project proposal. Partnership, as I mentioned, especially with the Erasmus Plus program, you would need a partnership. You would need some kind of partner. So as I said, this would be either set in the eligibility criteria. If the eligibility criteria does not necessarily indicate that you are required a partner, but you can do so, it is also, if you have a project that has an international aspect to it, it can help greatly if you do include partners, mainly because they give you expertise, and also they share the burden when it comes to the co-financing and also the implementation of the project, especially if your organization which might not have too much expertise with certain projects or in that particular project call. If you find an organization that is more experienced in that program, it can help significantly. So how many partners do you need? So this can vary. You can either look at the eligibility criteria and go for the minimum. As I mentioned, for example, the Erasmus Plus YETE Exchange, which is the example that I gave, the criteria there was for a minimum of 1 partner. you can always look at you can always go for the minimum if it makes sense, but at times it's not ideal going for the minimum, because if that partner pulls out in the last second or even during the implementation, then the project has to be concluded. The project will not be able to continue. And that at times can put a lot of pressure on different organizations. They would have spent so much time either in the planning of their project and in the writing of the application form, and in the last second they have to scrap everything, or else during the implementation they would have already implemented done a lot of work and achieved a number of results, but then all these results are lost and the project then loses the funding. So if for certain programs, it's not ideal to go for the minimum. How do you find a partner? So there are varying different ways to do so. You can do so through online platforms. There are a number of platforms such as Salto, which can help with this. Especially when it comes to Erasmus Plus, Salto is seen as one of the better online platforms. You can go sometimes on our website. If we see organizations that approach us that have a project idea that need partners, we sometimes do put an advert on our website, but that is not often. Direct contact with other organizations. So you as an organization might have a strong network already in place, which you can tap into to find partners. And more often than not, that is the ideal way to find partners, because you will know these organizations, their capacity, their capabilities, and also their interests. So immediately it becomes more efficient. The whole process becomes much more efficient. So how do you choose a good partner? So previous experience helps a lot, especially when it comes to not just the project application stage. So if you find a good partner which has a significant experience, it can make the application stage much easier and much more efficient. But also during implementation. During implementation, different projects do face a number of difficulties. And if you have organizations with experience as partners, they can help in these situations because they might have already experienced such issues. Perhaps greatly showing interest. So if you have a partner which maybe doesn't have much experience but is interested in the project and is continually helping with ideas and helping, especially at application stage, that could be a very good. Having the same objectives, so organizations which are aligned with your organization when it comes to their interests and also what they want to achieve with the organization, also their projects, and then sound finances, especially for certain large programs. If you are going for certain programs which do require large budgets, more often than not, at different stages, either during application or implementation, they will ask for certain proof of your accounting or auditing from both the applicant and the partner. So it is important that all organizations have sound finances. How do you deal with a partner? As I already mentioned, the first thing that you should do is try to sign some kind of agreement or MOU. And that like that you have at least something binding at the early stage, which will show that all of you are moving together on the right path. Lead by example. So if you are a lead applicant, it is also important to continually involve the other organization and also show that you are on track with everything and that you are working hard on their project proposal, so they also understand the importance of this project. And then finally, aim to build solid relationships. So from here, this deals with not just during the application stage, but also during implementation. So once you start applying and implementing these projects, you can start to build different relationships with different organizations, and like that, you quickly understand what would be good partners for different projects. Project development. So here we're going to go into a bit more into detail of once you have a project idea, how you start developing this idea further, and then finally turning this, putting this down on the application form. So the first thing that you need to look for is the problem. The problem that you want to tackle with your project. That will be the base of your project. From this problem, you will be able to develop all the different aspects of the project proposal. So from the problem, then you will go into the needs analysis. The needs analysis is somewhat dependent on the aspect of the problem. So here you have identified the problem, and then you start looking at what the impacts of this problem are, and why the need of your project, what is the need of your project, and how this project will tackle this problem. From the needs analysis, then you start developing objectives and activities. So what the objectives of your project are, and what activities you will have to tackle these objectives. From that, you will go into results and impact. So the result of the activities and the impact that it will have on the different target groups which you have. And finally, you have dissemination. So dissemination is what you're going to do to promote these results and promote the impact that your project had on the different target groups. What is important here is the aspect of synergy, that these are all interlinked. And although let's say the needs analysis does depend on the problem, for example, and so on and so forth, it is important to note that they also depend on each other on the way back. So the dissemination does depend on results and impact, but it also helps the results and impact. It helps increase the results, but it increases the impact of the this this can help these organizations impact their own project and also further increase the impact of your project. And then this goes into the objectives and activities, where the result and impact can help the objectives and activities, and this also goes into the needs analysis and the problem. So there is an interlinking between all these issues. You cannot have a needs analysis which does not have a problem, which is not targeting a particular problem. You can't have objectives without a properly fleshed out needs analysis, and like that, these are all dependent on each other and also help each other out. So it is important for all projects, when you start developing your project idea, that you go through this process. Once you have gone into this process, the application form becomes significantly easier to develop, because you have the skeleton of your project like this. Identifying the problem. So here, when you have the problem, to identify what kind of problem you want to target, you can look at 4 different things. You can look at your organization. So maybe problems that you might have within your organization. For example, you need training. For example, you have staff which aren't which aren't trained well. So then maybe if there are programs like the European Social Fund, which does help when it comes to training, especially for NGOs. So then that is your problem. Your target group. If your target group is a particular group, then kind of what are their problems? We can look at the news, for example, problems when it comes to the environment and also observation from society, that can help a lot when it comes to identifying different problems. So for example, here there's an example, let's say a problem from the news, that a quarter of Maltese citizens perceive the EU negatively. That could be a problem. Then when you have the problem, what are the causes and what are the effects? So what has caused this problem to rise, and then how has this problem impacted society? So if you go on our previous example on the aspect of the EU awareness and the perception of the EU in when it comes to the Maltese population, the causes are lack of awareness of EU benefits, the migration crisis, the financial crisis, rise of populism in the EU. These can all be causes which can lead to this problem. Then what are the effects? So the effects can be a loss of trust in the EU, end of Schengen, end of the euro, and local rise in populism. Then you have the needs analysis. So this is an important aspect, and when it comes to different project applications, this is usually the most the section that needs the most detail. And this is a section which is very heavily evaluated on. So here I need to look at why is the project needed for the organization. So in the case that the problem is, let's say, a lack of an issue, a lack of training, or then kind of the need would be this aspect of training, and to start doing analysis of what is the impact of this lack of training, and if you further train your organization, the people of the organization, how this will improve the work of the organization. Then for the target audience, so if the problem is something related to your target audience, what are their needs? And then you can go into, for example, more kind of a larger aspect, a more general aspect for Malta and then for the EU. So then kind of here I have a couple of useful tips. It is important to at least have one cause for a project. Sometimes when you go too much in terms of causes, your project can be a bit all over the place. So it is best sometimes to specifically focus on something and tackle that issue instead of trying to tackle a number of different issues. So if you go on the example that we are using, one cause for the aspect of the perception of the EU in Malta could be lack of awareness of EU benefits. So that is one of the cause that we have selected for this example. The second useful tip is use of statistics. So let's say if you go on our example, 28% of Maltese citizens do not know that Europe provides financial support to regions and cities. And that is a further that further kind of exemplify the cause. So why is there this lack of there is this lack of awareness, and it is clear that there is lack of awareness because around 28% don't know of the financial impacts that the EU has. And when you have certain data analysis, evaluators do appreciate that, because it further strengthens your idea, especially if it is backed by a new study. Sometimes those greatly help. Then you move on to the aim and objective. So the aim is the overall target I want to achieve through this project. So it's more the general target that you want to achieve. The objective then becomes more specific based on the aim. So there's more the specific target that you will be achieving to this project. The example of an aim, for example, in the case of SEM, we aim to create awareness on the benefits of the EU. Then, from the aims and objectives, we can also look at the activities. So if we aim to create awareness on the benefits of the EU, we would have to find activities which do meet the needs. In the case of the objective, it would be to inform 20 participants through 2 info sessions on the benefits of the EU. So inform 20 participants, that's a target of ours, and the activity will be the info sessions. What is important here is the aspect of being specific. How many people are going to inform, and that is substantiated by a number, and in how many different activities we're going to do it. We're going to be doing it through 2 info sessions, so it's 2 activities, and that is important for applications. When it comes to the objectives, what is important here is that they are smart in the sense that they are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. So that they are specifically target the different aspects that the overall idea that you put forward through the aim. The aspect of being measurable. So, and the example that we're using, how many people are we going to target? Attainable. We do not go for 20 information sessions of 20 people each, but that would not be attainable for an entity like SEM. But we go for numbers that we know for a fact we can attain. Being realistic, especially with especially knowing that we will not be able to attract, let's say, 1,000 people for our info sessions. We'd only be able to attract maybe 20 to 40 different sessions. So that is important. And then being time-based. So especially if we're doing a project which has a beginning and an end date, the activities can't last for the entire project, but you have to keep in mind the planning that goes into the activities and also the reporting, which organization has to do at the end of the project. So being it is important that these objectives are time-based, because those reflect on the activities that will be implemented. The result and the impact. So when it comes to the result, it's important that these are that they are specific also, and they have measurable outputs and reflect objective results are very easy because they are just a reflection of the objectives. So in the case of the objectives, the target was to have 20 participants attending 2 info sessions. The result would be reflective of that. So then the result would be 20 participants have attended an info session on new funding. It is completely reflective of the objective. The impact, this has to be on the participants that you will have, on the organizations which are participating, and on also Malta and the EU, and they reflect the aim and the effect of the project. So in the end, the impact of these info sessions and the information that we provided would be that more Maltese citizens are now more aware of the benefits of EU membership. Then we have dissemination. So for the EU, the aspect of dissemination is one of its most important things, because it is a way in which it shows kind of what it is doing, what its impacts are on the different citizens across the different EU countries, and so it puts that pressure and that work also on the organizations which would have received EU funding. So you need to project your project, the results that it achieved, the funding program from which it received funding, and also the funds themselves. So you have to say, when you promote something, that this project was funded by the EU and funded through, let's say, the Erasmus Plus program. First, when it comes to dissemination, it's important to define your target group. So through your dissemination activities, let's say newspapers or stuff like that, newspaper articles or social media, when writing the project proposal or developing your idea, it is important to define your target groups. So if let's say you have 3 specific target groups, let's say you have youths, what activities are you going to do to target youths through your dissemination? And the second useful tip is the identification of appropriate communication tools for a specific target group. As I mentioned, if you're targeting youths, you're not going to write a newspaper article because that target the younger populations. you would focus on social media, for example. Then we have monitoring and evaluation. So monitoring the process whereby the project manager follows the progress being made in implementing the proposed project activities. So here, the aspect of the project manager and also the project management team, what they're going to do to make sure to make sure that everything is being implemented properly and on time. So here you can have can keep a daily log of what is being done, progress reports, kind of if you set a proper timeline of what you want to achieve at different and have different deadlines, these can be part of progress reports. And then evaluation. Organizations implementing projects are expected to evaluate the success of their project in reaching the planned aims and objectives. So what kind of this comes at different aspects of your project, especially if you have a long project which spans a number of years. At different intervals, you are supposed to evaluate what you have achieved at those different points and their success. So these can, if you have, let's say, a training activity or an info session, you can have evaluation forms for participants to see that the information that you provided, for example, was good, and the session that you planned actually achieved what you wanted to achieve. Project writing and useful tips. So first, when it comes to more often than not, the first section that a number of proposals would be the project description. So here is the justification as to why your project should be funded. And more often than not, in the project description, it would have the aspect of the needs analysis. So here you will need to incorporate your needs analysis. And here we are referring to statistics, anecdotal evidence, and own experience, national and or EU policy, and also reference to the core priorities. So more often than not, the core priorities give you they give you an idea of what they want achieved. So once you have identified what core priorities your project wants to target, you start those are let's say you can use those as your first guide of your needs analysis, and from there you start doing your research on on the importance of your project and how you want to target those core priorities. The aspect of statistics is very important, not because you just add weight to your project, but also when it comes to the actual reading of the project proposal. When you put in as a needs analysis and project description section are usually an overwhelming majority share of the project application form, it can be a bit tiring when by evaluators when they're reading these proposals. So having these statistics and these breaks, let's say, in the writing and the proposal itself, helps evaluators when it comes to reading. It relaxes them more when they're reading their project proposal, and so it can engage them continually in the proposal because they're continually seeing something different. EU added value. So there's no single definition when it comes to EU added value, but more often than not, this can be tied to the contribution that the project will make to EU policy and legislation, how it contributes to different EU initiatives, how easily is the project, how easily can the project be replicated, and also the activities and impacts can be transferred to different organizations and also different projects, and also the aspect of transnationality is that the project is not just limited to one country or two countries, but it is something that the impacts and the results of the project can be transferred to different organizations, and different countries across the EU. When it comes to the added value, this is another section of great importance in any proposal, and this is given heavy. It is weighted quite heavily. Sustainability, so continuation of the project impact and results after project has ended and EU funding is no longer being allocated to it. So this is also a section which is found in a number of different programs, especially in the larger EU funding programs. When we're talking about significant sums of money, the EU, although the project has to be concluded, the EU does not want that the results and the results achieved through your project and also the impact achieved are not lost. So you have to show in your project application how these results are sustained. So let's say if you had training, if there was some form of training implemented, that material, for example, that is used in the training is compiled into some kind of let's say a small book or guidelines. So from that can be uploaded on the website, let's say, and that can be seen by different organizations, and they can take different ideas from the training that had been implemented. Dissemination, exploitation, and visibility. So here, when it comes to this, more often than not in different application forms, it's not just, you don't expect you just to provide information, and this is dissemination. So not just the promotion of your project, but you also expect aspects of exploitation and visibility. So when it comes to dissemination, here is the promotion of activities of the project and its different aspects, and this is necessary in all types of projects. So the example here is a social media post. Then you have exploitation. So here is teaching target groups how to use the results of a project. So some form of, let's say, online workshop to promote lesson plans developed in a project. Like I mentioned previously, if you had some kind of training which was funded that the information learned from that training is compiled into some kind of book, and then once that booklet or guide is developed, you hold some kind of sessions so you can share those results and also teach what you have learned to other participants from other organizations. And then finally, visibility. So here is the aspect of the use of EU logos and text showing that project is co-financed. So let's say if you do a social media post, which is dissemination, that use the EU logo with the post. That if in any sessions, for example, the one that we are doing now, Alec, and the backdrop has put the European Solidarity Corps logo, and that is very important. So when it comes to developing of a budget, I have used the Erasmus Plus program again to show you a basic understanding of the budget. When it comes to Erasmus Plus, it is based on the activities and the number of, in this case, is Euro for Citizens. For Citizens is based on the number of participants and the number of involved countries. This is set. So this is one of the more easier ones when it comes to the compilation of the budget, because everything is already set. It works in lump sums, and so you don't need to do market research yourself for different aspects. They give you financing on the number of countries involved and the number of participants, and these can vary. When it comes to different funding programs, unfortunately, it does become much more difficult when it comes to developing of the budget, because for different funding programs, they don't use an online system. They give you an Excel, and you have to do your market research yourself. And here you would have to look, contact different suppliers for different things that you want to implement, and you have to see what kind of prices they would have, and then apply with those, let's say, prices. It does give you a bit more freedom, so you don't have a set amount of funding that you will be given. It is everything based on what you want to implement. So it is a bit more kind of on what you are, on your capabilities, and especially on your market research. But it takes it takes much longer during the project application stage. The budget sections do take a significant amount of time. The Erasmus one is similar to the SF one. There isn't much difficulty because a lot of the sums are set, so there isn't much market research involved. But it is practically those two programs which have these simple, let's say, budgets. For the other programs, things become much more difficult. Project summary. This is the last question and section of each project proposal, and it's practically telling you to summarize your project, including all key elements. When I write project proposals, I leave this section as my last section. So what I do here is I finish all the different sections once the project has been concluded, and I've checked it, and I've made all my amendments that I need to make. Then I start looking at the different sections of the application form and taking from these sections and formulating my project summary through this. The project summary at different application forms, they specifically detail what they want. So they might tell you they just want the objectives and the activities. And some others, the Erasmus Plus program tends to ask for a number of different aspects. So it tends to want a summary of everything. So then here you include what the aim is, a sentence about the aim, the different objectives and bullets, the different activities in bullets, what the target group, how many participants and their number, timeline of the project, and then how this will, what results this will achieve and how this will impact different target groups which you have identified. But project summary, as I mentioned, it is best that this section is left for last. So here, a number of tips. I've already gone through a few tips throughout the project, throughout this application, throughout this presentation, but some others. So first one is tip 1, keep track of the project details and the aspect of being organized. At times, different application forms, they require, as I mentioned, not just the application form, but also different attachments. When it comes to these attachments, if there are long lists, it is easy to maybe forget an attachment or maybe not save it properly, and then when you have the submission, you don't include all the attachments all the documents that you will require. It's important that you have a file on your computer where you put everything related to the application form in that folder. You set a list of the attachments that you need, and you start targeting these different attachments from this list. Tip 2, accommodate for your own writing style. So you have to understand that when it comes with the evaluator, sees a number of different proposals for each submission. So it is important that when you write, that you are clear when you're writing, and the aspect of being concise. So if you have a certain writing style, which is maybe longer and more drawn out, in my case, that is my writing style. I tend to like writing in large chunks of large paragraphs. It is important that kind of you do amend your style. So when I write application forms, I amend my writing style and I go for shorter paragraphs and being more direct, because it becomes much easier to read. Tip 3, share the writing responsibilities. So if you are in a project consortium, it is ideal that you share the responsibilities of the project of the project writing. So if let's say you're doing a youth exchange between two different organizations and you are all agreed on the objectives, the need of the project, the problem, and on all these the skeleton of your project, then you can start dividing sections of the application form amongst yourself, and then continually sharing what you have written to make sure that it all makes sense. Certain project application forms don't take a significant amount of time to write, although all the project application forms do take some time to write, but there are some which take much longer than others. And when it comes to those project proposals, if you start the project writing phase quite late, then you will not be able to submit a project application if you just write it unilaterally. The fourth tip, do not refer to ineligible activities. So if the core document and the call itself allow for job shadowing but not training, in the application form, at no point do you refer to training, even if let's say job shadowing does technically fall under the idea of training. It is the use of wording which for an activity which they would deem ineligible would allow your project to become ineligible itself. So it's important the kind of wording that you use, and that everything falls in line with what the call wants. Tip 5, check your partner's information. So for different proposals, you will be required to provide information about your partner, such as their organization, what the organization does, what the members of these organizations which will be working on the project, kind of what they do, what is their role within the project organization. And it's important to check this information, and also checking the information, the work that they're doing when it comes to their writing responsibilities. So if they're given the section of the activities, you check that section to make sure that it is in line kind of with the objectives, which is a section that you might have written. So that is important. And then tip 6, ask someone external to the project to give your application a read through. So if you have someone within your organization who maybe isn't working on that project, you can send it to them to vet it for you. In the case of us, SEM, we also help with this, where you can send us a project proposal and we can vet it and give you feedback, and also can implement certain sections. This helps significantly as it gives a different perspective of your project. We do this internally ourselves when we write project proposals. We always send them to our director, who will give us comments and feedback on what we can do to make the project proposal stronger. And that helps significantly because your project might make sense to you, because you would have been the person that would have developed the idea and the objectives and the activities, but you might have not written them down. You might have not written these ideas in a clear enough manner, and so from someone outside of the project, once they have a look at it, they might not understand the whole idea of the project. And so like that, you can go back and rewrite certain aspects to make them much easier to understand or more understandable. Then what should you do once the application is finalized? You can double check all the answers to the questions. Make sure all attachments have been included. This is significantly important, because in some cases, you might be, once the application is submitted, you might be sent clarifications where they will provide you with a couple of days to provide an attachment which we might have missing, but in some cases also there are certain attachments which are obligatory. And in those cases, they will not send a clarification letter, they will just make your project ineligible. So all the work that would have done would have been lost just because we might have not attached a particular attachment or not have also even tried to get that attachment. Then finally, in certain forms, before they are submitted, they do require that you validate. So here, the validation process is that they check that everything is okay on the online system, and they have provided all the answers required and everything. And then once it's validated and there are no errors or no issues, then you can submit. And as I mentioned, finally, you submit your application form. Make sure that you are submitting this on the deadline. More often than not, the day when there's a deadline, there's also a time when these might be submitted. Sometimes these might be in the afternoon, and sometimes these might be at 5 on that same day or by midnight. You have to check the time, because especially now there are a lot of the forms are going online. Nearly all of the forms are online, and when it comes to online forms, they do not give you the opportunity to submit, and the application for and the call time frame is concluded. So then you would have to wait maybe a year, maybe longer, to submit that project proposal. So that is kind of the conclusion of my presentation. Kind of I open the floor if there are any questions, or if you want me to go back on certain aspects of the presentation, maybe you want some detail about something in particular.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Andrea. Yeah. Anyone with questions, you can just unmute and ask your question, and then we can get Andrea to answer. Okay. Hedwig.
I just wanted to find out. Sorry, I just wanted to find out whether we can get the slides to this workshop.
Yes, yes, I will be able to send them to Alec, and then he can disseminate himself. Shouldn't be a problem.
All right.
Thank you.
Good. And also, I didn't ask your permission, but I'm sure you saw that I was recording.
Yeah, it's no problem, Alex.
So
it's no problem.
I'm going to share that as well. So
It's no problem. It's no problem, Alex.
If you need the video, I will give you the
No,
video as well.
it's no problem for me. Unfortunately, they're going to only be able to hear my voice because my camera was not working. I've had this issue for a couple of weeks now, and unfortunately, because we're in kind of this lockdown, I can't get anyone from our technical support to help me with this issue.
Yeah, no, that's good, and I think the voice and the presentation works good. Any other comments or remarks? Thanks, Peter. Peter, I have Peter, who's joined from Zimbabwe. Peter was part of the Bridging the Gap project that we implemented. It was a capacity building project, which we actually got assistance as well from you guys, and we went to South Africa with Lean to one of the mobilities, and Peter is actually working with an NGO that we sort of connected with in Zimbabwe. So Peter is saying thank you. He's put some comments here.
Thank you.
So,
Very good presentation, very useful, exactly clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bianca. Okay, guys, if there are no questions, then we can actually go and work.
Sorry, can I just ask
we have so much.
Sorry, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
Yes, no problem.
Do I miss
Yes.
Yeah, please. I joined your presentation halfway because Bella just drew my attention to it. I noticed that you are referring mostly to EU. is are you going to say that this is more or less a model for presentation for funding needs?
So,
With, of course, going to have different amendments.
So,
or is it specifically for a need?
So when it comes to developing a project, a lot of these things can be, a lot of these ideas and methodologies can be used not just for EU funding projects, but for all kind of projects. So more often than not, even let's say if you look at, in the case of Malta, there is local funding application forms, and although they might be, let's say, more simple than, let's say, the EU funding, they do require certain aspects, they do require certain sections and certain information. And more often than not, you can use these systems of developing a problem, developing the needs analysis, the activities and everything like this, as the skeleton also for those kind of proposals, and all other forms of projects. Because it is difficult to start a project if there is no problem, because then the concept of having that project, there is nothing attached to it. So then it becomes very difficult to actually implement that project because you're not identifying a particular problem and a particular need. So these ideas can be used for all forms of project, and not just those which are specific to EU funding.
Okay. And also, if I can come in, we started applying for EU projects around about 2014, and we hooked ourselves to SEM. They were MUSEC then. And since then, I would say that the success rate of our proposal has been around about 90%. So, and of course, the majority of our projects are EU funded, but we've used the same knowledge that we got from them in writing EU projects into other projects that are not EU funded. And we have seen ourselves winning and getting funding from the other projects. So I think it's just the technique. There are other aspects that we have gone through, like the problem tree and many other different techniques that we now use. And there are some projects that come with specific techniques that they want us to use. And because we've gone through this process, we can sort of try to understand the new technique and apply the same principles. So it works across the board.
Yes, and these ideas, they're not just limited to us, but if you also go, I believe there are a number of kind of websites which you can find, and also books on development of projects, and a lot of these, all of these would have a similar methodology. What I provided you also when it comes to the writing. So then when it comes to the writing, those are things which we have identified. We've written so many different application forms that we have identified certain techniques and certain ways which come from experience. So instead of kind of putting you having to learn all those things slowly, there are these steps which can immediately use to implement, which can take you a level above those organizations which are inexperienced, for example. So there is a balance of kind of things that we have learned, but also things which are more publicly known.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. One more point. Although I missed the early part of presentation, but I noticed that in your concluding part, you had a summary. Why do you decide to leave it till the end? I would have suggested that possibly that end not necessarily be a summary, but what you might call a talking point. But the early part may possibly give what you might call an executive summary or what to expect. And then because of the time factor, in most cases, people don't have time to go through a lot of documents. So once you have one page or or thereabout to have a page, and it gives them an idea of what you are after, and that will also make an interest. Having said that, from the little I've seen, I must commend you for what you have done.
Thank you. I put this that section there because that section is found in all application forms. So what I was going through is I was showing the different sections of the application forms, and more often than not, the summary is one of the last questions that you do find. So after you have the project description and the activities, one of the last questions that you will have is to provide a summary of what you provided in the application form. And that you can start with that section, but if you might have made a changes during different questions in the application form, you would then need to reflect those changes in the summary. So I tend to leave that section, the question of the project summary, for last, because it just makes it much easier, because I wouldn't need to have, we wouldn't need to edit the other sections of the application form or edit at different stages, because the project summary, more often than not, does not carry any marks with it. It is just there. So if your project is approved for funding, the EU takes the project summary section and uses that section to promote your project itself. And that is why I kept it a bit towards the end, because it is something that is the final step of one of the final steps of writing of your project. Once you're writing the project summary, it means that all your sections are finished, you've checked them, and you're in agreement with all of your partners on the other sections. So then you write the project summary, and then you conclude everything and make sure that you have all the attachments.
Thank you.
Any other remarks, guys? Okay, Andrea, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And thanks for the input. I appreciate that. Pass my regards to everybody at
Yes, for sure. I will also send you the presentation so you can disseminate internally yourself as well.
All right, okay. Anyway, to all the other guys that are here, that are some of the partners we work with, we can take advantage of SEM if we are part of a project, but obviously you won't be able to email your project to them if you're not in Malta. But the information that we have here will avail it to you all. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.
Thank you all. Good day.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thanks. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.